Thank you, everyone. And it's great to be with you, both with our global Green Party family, and because, as many of you know, I was born in Patras in 1958, and I was adopted by Americans in 1959. And just last year, I discovered for the first time my Greek family. And it was very exciting and inspiring for me to reconnect to my roots. I want to make some brief comments about the status of the Green Party in the United States and the Green New Deal in the United States, because that connects to our topic today about mineral extraction, fossil fuel extraction in your part of the world, and in particular in the context of the US electoral system. The 2000 election was the most difficult election for the Green Party, perhaps in our history, even more than in 2004. In 2004, we were blamed for George Bush stealing the election from Al Gore in Florida because of the votes that Ralph Nader received. But at that time, our party was growing. We had benefited from the mediocrity of the Clinton and Gore administration, and our numbers when Ralph Nader ran for president for us in 1996, that was a sign to a lot of independent thinkers to actually join a new party and not just be in the Democrats. So our numbers were increasing and increasing. And even though 2004 was difficult, we were a growing party. Now we're in a very different context. We have been blamed for 20 years now for the faults of the Democrats. And the Democrats don't take responsibility for their mediocrity. And instead they want to put it all on the tiny Green Party. And in particular, the Bernie Sanders campaigns in 2016 and 2020 were a disaster for the Green Party. Why? You might think, well, he's pushing forward issues that the more conservative part of the Democrats don't support. But the problem is we have an expression in English called sheepdogging, that the dogs that are used to move the sheep. So Sanders has been pulling people who are frustrated with the Democrats and Republicans. He's pulling them into the Democratic Party and making them believe that change is going to come within our two-party duopoly winner-take-all electoral system. And as Greens, we don't believe that that's possible. But because he has the resources of running in the Democratic Party, millions of young people who don't believe in our US economic system because they saw the economy crash in 2008, because they were part of the Occupy Wall Street movement, because effectively capitalism for them has failed them. They think the place to go is into the Democratic Party. So as a result, when Sanders tries to win in the Democratic primary, you have to be a member of the Democratic Party, or at least an independent voter in some states, to vote in the Democratic Party. And that has cost us large amounts of our members, large amounts of our candidates, large amounts of our office holders. So that made 2020 much more difficult. And then under our electoral system for president, this was a get rid of Trump no matter what. So people were afraid to run to vote for Green. In that context, one of our party co-founders, a man named Howie Hawkins from New York, who was the first person to campaign on a Green New Deal in the United States back in 2010, when he ran for governor of New York, he ran as our candidate. And strategically, he made sense because he could point to the difference in the Green New Deal that we have been sponsoring and the weaker Green New Deal that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ed Markey have promoted, which itself was rejected by the Democratic Party. And some of the main differences there is that we talked about getting to zero greenhouse gas, to a carbon neutral economy by 2030, not 2050, as Biden and the Democrats are talking. And we put forward a plan to pay for it that included cutting the US military spending by at least half and possibly more. And obviously, the military is both a greenhouse gas emitter and is used around the planet to dominate other economies to ensure the wasteful use of fossil fuels and other resources on the planet. So the fact that the Democrats were not willing to even confront military spending, and they just supported a $730 billion war budget, is a major difference in our party. Also, the Democrats refused to support a ban on fracking. They rejected the Green Call to stop any further new fossil fuel infrastructure, and they continue to want to waste billions of dollars on the nuclear industry. So these are all massive differences. And earlier, the earlier comments about how the natural gas industry is there to try and profit on remaining fossil fuels, the Greens have called in the United States for public ownership of the energy industries to get rid of that dynamic of private corporations manipulating our politics to try and profit on fossil fuels. The closing points I'll make then are, what are some of the positives that we can draw from the Green performance in this past year? Around the world, when George Floyd was murdered by the police in Minneapolis, Minnesota in May, you saw the protests, young people coming alive across the United States, all the wonderful racial and ethnic diversity in our country saying no to that dynamic. Well, in Minneapolis, they have 13 city council members, and 9 of them voted to entirely change how public safety in Minneapolis and change their police department. One of the leaders of those 9 is a Green Party member, Cam Gordon. And the fact that we were a leader and that a Green office holder is shown to be at the forefront of one of the most important social issues in our country is a big deal. In California, where I live, in Los Angeles County, we won a mayor's position. A 25-year-old young Latino named Emmanuel Estrada defeated I think a 18-year incumbent mayor there. And what is really important for the growth of the Green Party and why his election was so important is, with the changing and evolving demographics in the United States, we need to provide an example that coming into the Green Party is an option for young progressive youth of color. And somebody like Emmanuel winning as a mayor and now showing how he can govern is a big deal for us. The other thing that's most positive is that the diminishing returns and the polarization that comes from the US duopoly, the two-party system that comes from our British winner-take-all system, is collapsing around the country. And people are calling for reform that never did before. The New York Times has called for a change to proportional representation for Congress, a larger Congress and proportional representation. And the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, just a mainstream academic group, they've called for the same thing. And then specifically, there has been a change in adopting for municipal elections the Irish system of the single transferable vote, where you can rank the candidates, and if your first choice doesn't win, your vote goes to your second choice and third choice until there is a majority winner. That addresses the vote splitting spoiler dynamic that is such a problem for the Green Party and how we are blamed. That has passed in many cities where local cities have used the initiative process, or the city council has been forced to put it on the ballot through voting rights cases. And that has passed in more and more cities. And it also passed in the state of Alaska to use for their general elections. And it's already used in the state of Maine. So there's now an opening in the United States for electoral reform that wasn't there before. And I'll close by mentioning that when I ran for California Secretary of State in 2018, I campaigned on the German system, specifically for California to go to a single unicameral legislature of 500 members. And we would use the same system where we would have some of the seats elected proportionally and some of them with, as they say in Germany, the direct mandate, and combine the two. And the percentage of vote that I got kept the Green Party on the ballot in California. So that's a short overview, and thank you for your time.